The 2000s were debatably the best time to be a Star Wars fan, especially if you were a kid. There was so much stuff to keep you invested. Sure, not everyone liked the prequel films, but you also had so many comics, novels, and even the 2 separate Clone Wars TV shows. It wasn't like the day where Star Wars feels like it's just a bit oversaturated with the constant output of half-baked Disney Plus shows, with a side dish of comics and books. Instead, it was more like you had the primary course being all 6 movies, at the time, and everything else was optional for your enjoyment. But I think we all know I'm neglecting to mention one important factor: LucasArts. These guys were the goats at making licensed games, and if we're being real, there was actually a surprising amount of good licensed games for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. Yet Star Wars stood head and shoulders above them all. We had the Jedi Knights games, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, Battlefront. I could probably keep going and list on just how many great games LucasArts released in the 2000s alone. Yet if I had to choose one year as the ultimate year for the Star Wars brand, it would be 2005. Now, you all probably know how big of a deal Revenge of the Sith was. I was only 3 years old, and I still remember about a lot of what came out around that time. The toys, the marketing, the commercials. And this was also the year where Star Wars would put out some of their best games. The 4 games that stand out from that year alone being Republic Commando, a cult classic in its own right; Battlefront 2, one of my favorite games ever made. I actually made a video on that a long time ago. Lego Star Wars, a game that started one of the biggest empires in all of gaming, and honestly holds up pretty well if you consider it the first in its series. And finally, a game that's actually pretty unique compared to the other Star Wars games: Revenge of the Sith, the video game. On paper, this didn't need to be anything special. Most tie-in movie games are just kind of slapped together at the time. Yet this game stands in that upper echelon for making a game that's actually good, if not something that should be remembered. And well, they did this by doing something I find interesting, and I wish we saw more with other Star Wars games. They looked at Revenge of the Sith and went, well, what if we took Star Wars and mixed it with Devil May Cry? Look, I know that's a bit of a hyperbolic statement. There weren't many action games from around the time, but Devil May Cry was basically the first. But if we're being real, a Star Wars action game is a no-brainer. And really, we've only gotten about 3 of them. The Force Unleashed also exists, though I'd argue they pull a lot more influence from the God of War series, which is perfectly fine and works for that series of games. Yet that just leaves ROTS as this anomaly, this special thing that happened only once. An action game with a surprising amount of depth, content, and uniquity that has yet to be seen again. So come along with me as I talk about Revenge of the Sith, the video game. The first thing we should talk about, obviously, is the main gameplay, which is actually sort of boundary pushing, at least for action gaming at the time. That's because they give you not just one character to play as, but 2. And while you can't exactly pick which character you want to play as before each level, it's still something that was generally uncommon for many action games to do at the time. The only other game of this style that did anything similar to this around the same time was Beautiful Joe 2, but that one's a completely different style of action game, so is that even really a fair comparison? Yet what makes this decision even better is that Anakin and Obi-Wan, the 2 playable characters in the campaign, have completely different styles of gameplay. Anakin plays a lot closer to your typical hack-and-slash protagonist. Fast slashes, a lot of juggle potential, and the occasional move that covers a lot of ground. He's comparable to a Rushdown character where he's built completely around overwhelming your enemies in a flurry of blows, though he doesn't exactly fare well when it comes to breaking guards or heavy defense. He has some tools against it, but only really like some charge moves and a grab. Obi-Wan, by comparison, is a bit unorthodox for this kind of game. Yes, he still has combos and other typical elements. He's more so a character that requires a bit more patience in a way, an almost counter character. He has a much easier time breaking guards. In fact, many of his charge moves come at the end of a combo just so he can get past an enemy's block. He is quite literally the antithesis to Anakin's entire toolkit. While one is a flurry of aggressive swings and fiery pressure, the other one is a slow, calm, methodical swordsman, which, might I add, is incredible work from the team. It seems they examined just how the characters, and by extension the actors' fighting styles in the movies, are presented and interpreted into their video game counterparts. I doubt it's a one-to-one adaptation of the Saberform's Jem So and Sorisu, yet I think we could give them just a little bit of artistic license with that. Though these differences in fighting style will matter a lot later, so keep an eye on that. The general level structure of the game is pretty linear. Usually you'll go through hallways or open spaces fighting off enemies and occasionally doing small contextual actions. Nothing crazy, just the occasional force jump or pressing a button, though my only complaint is that doing some of the force-reliant contextual commands uses up a section of the force meter. It's not game ruining or anything, but it could be a little annoying to wait for your bar to charge up just to make one measly jump. However, they do give you a lot to do with your force powers during gameplay. You could straight up grab enemies with the force and just toss them off ledges. It's honestly pretty satisfying to do, but you can also do things like Force Run where you get a boost in speed at the expense of draining your force meter. Of course, you can also do your basic things like your Force Push as well as Saber Throw. You know, the typical force abilities you can think of. Yet you can also use Jedi Mind Trick, which really only works on the clones. To everything else, it works more like a stun. which is definitely fine since it's actually useful in certain combat encounters. There's also Force Heal, which is really only useful during boss fights, though when Anakin turns evil, you could just straight up use the powers of the dark side. It's pretty much limited to Force Choke and Force Lightning, but hey, it's still pretty cool, honestly. There's also many Force Enhanced attacks you could do, many of which are either combo extenders, enders, or just good charge attacks to break block. Though, if I'm being honest, Obi-Wan I think has a better selection of Force moves than Anakin. I mean, Anakin doesn't have a lightsaber Shoryuken, so, you know. Every once in a while during a level, you'll have to do a turret section. I swear, I feel like I complain about these things like once a video now. These turrets are okay. Not offensively bad by any means, but they could be cut and I would feel absolutely nothing about it. Really, the main appeal of this game is when you get a deeper dive into what happens into the movie. They really take a lot of these moments and scenes and expand them out to larger, bigger levels. This is helped a lot by the level designs as well as the voice cast themselves, which is pretty much a lot of the same voice cast from the 2003 Clone Wars series, which is almost the exact same cast as the 2008 Clone Wars series, excluding Anakin's voice actor. Also, I don't know where else to put this, but Anakin's death screams this game are just so funny to me. They almost have this whimpery quality to them. It's so weird.
How could you turn your back on all that you are?
But Matt Lucas, the voice actor, does a great job doing an impression of Hayden Christensen's performance in Episode 3, and really just in general, he's a great voice actor. Anyways, throughout most of the levels, you'll be hacking and slashing enemies. In fact, let me tell you about some of the best levels in the game. My favorite has to be Obi-Wan to the ruins of the Jedi Temple. There's something so morose about this entire level, trudging through whatever remains of the place you thought was a safe haven. And also, a lot of the clone enemies here are genuinely cool. I know some people hate the clone assassin enemies, but I find them to be a good challenge. You just gotta be patient and willing to let them make a mistake. The level on Grievous's bridge is great too, the level shifting as the ship starts to turn around and around as you fight the Magna Guards. Plus, the whole section where you're standing on the glass window and battling is just a really cool visual. Another one of the best levels is where you play as Anakin attacking the Jedi Temple, and it's really just because we get to see a lot more of what happened on that day, and Matt Lucas is just hamming it up to be so evil for Anakin. Just hearing him maniacally laugh as we push through waves of Jedi is a fun experience. Plus, this is the only level with Jedi as basic enemies, and that makes it truly special, to be honest. There's only one level I'd actually say is kind of bad, and it's Anakin's mission on Mustafar. Now, the level design itself is not really the issue, but rather the special enemies for this level. The Grunt Neimoidian guards are the most annoying enemies in the entire game. They have these electrical rods that literally stun lock you for 3-hit combos, and if more than one attacks you, well, you got no defense against it. It's not enough to kill you usually, but it's so stupid that I can't even truly block these guys at all. Speaking of combat, it's finally time we talk about the bosses. When a boss fight appears, this game essentially turns into a well-tuned fighting game. You actually have to consider when to attack and when to block. It does suck that the bosses sometimes will just spam Force Heal, but I don't know, just saying, most fighting game players would most likely make some sort of pact to not use Force Heal, but the AI doesn't really care about morals or really any sort of honor, so just beat them up, okay? Most of the boss fights are not too difficult. There's really only two that I'd say provide a genuine challenge, and the first being General Grievous, but not in the way you'd think. Every time I fight this robo bastard, he spams the same 3-hit combo in the first quarter of his boss fight. On paper, that's not bad, but it's a perfect loop. Not quite an infinite, but it could juggle you for a while. Yet, once you get past that, it somehow becomes a cakewalk. I don't know what happened here, but somehow the first section is way more annoying than the last 3 to 4. It's kinda weird. The other boss fight that's a real challenge is the final level where you play as Anakin fighting Obi-Wan. Remember how I said it feels like Kenobi has the perfect counter to Skywalker? Yeah, you really start to feel it here. This guy just has the perfect counter to anything you do. I swear it feels like the game is reading my inputs or something. On my second attempt, I even got this bullshit ending where him and I died at the same time. Like, geez guys, could you have made that any more annoying? But other than that, a lot of the boss fights are decent challenges. I don't think I died on any of them, except for the ones I mentioned before. The only boss fights I'd say that are genuinely awful are these 2 ship boss fights that they give you back to back. For some reason, they decided that a boss fight where you have to spam saber throw until a ship dies would be fun. It's not. In fact, it's actually the most boring thing you could have made a player do. It doesn't help that 2 levels back to back have the same boss fight at the end of them. They give you these little explosive barrels to throw, but due to how force throw and lock-on works, it'll more than likely miss. So you gotta wait, saber throw, wait, throw. It's just not fun, man. It's basically just one long waiting game without anything to make it interesting. It does only happen twice, and the levels after are well made, so it seems like maybe they were just here to pad out for time, cause, well, the game is actually pretty short. The main story mode only lasts like 4 hours maximum last time I checked. So then what else can you do to get more out of this game? Well, thankfully, this game provides a lot of bonus games. Yes, this game gives you some single-player bonus missions, co-op missions, and even a fighting game mode, so that way you can really battle it out with your friends. Let's start with the bonus missions because they're really quite simple. You unlock 4 throughout the game. There's the mission where you play as Grievous as you fight off a swarm of clones and droids until eventually beating Kenobi. It's small, a fun little snack of a game. Then there's the Mustafar platforming mission, and it is bad. This game is not a platformer, and I have no idea what they were thinking when they made this one. It just doesn't work, it's not fun, I've never enjoyed this one. The Yoda one is easily the best because you get to play as Yoda and just rip through a ton of clones. And I think Yoda controls better than Grievous, so that's really it, really. And finally, the last mission is Darth Vader and Ben Kenobi fighting from A New Hope, and it's okay. The arena is super small, to be honest. Vader kinda sucks to play. I mean, I get it, he's meant to be slow and lumbering like a tank, but that doesn't make it fun. At least not with these controls. Then we have the co-op missions, and there's not much to talk about here. Just get you and a buddy to fight off waves of enemies. Though I do think that having the playable characters being only Anakin and Obi-Wan for 3 out of 4 of them is kind of a letdown. I mean, you could have a mode where you play as Mace Windu, or someone else, or even Count Dooku and Grievous teaming up. I don't know, just mix it up, guys. The only unique one is where you play as Sarah Keto and Sin Drallig. Respectfully, I don't know who wants to play those characters. Does anyone really like these characters? Like, I know there's a lot of beloved EU characters I could think of that would go here instead, but whatever. Look, the real meat of potatoes here is the 1v1 fighting game mode, and this is genuinely a fun time. You play as all the bosses in the game, as well as Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's not the biggest roster in the world, being only about 9 characters in total, though maybe not having Yoda be playable is for the better. Does anyone else still wake up in cold sweats at night thinking about fighting Yoda in Soul Calibur 4? Just me? Okay. Anyways, this is a great mode. Each character does have a distinct playstyle. So, while it is low in quantity, it makes up for it in quality. I main Obi-Wan since he is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, but also because I enjoy his counterplay style. Of course, this means that all your Force abilities are given to you and you can use them at your leisure. But whenever me and my friends play, we usually make a pact not to use Force Heal. If we do, we forfeit that round because come on, man. Straight up healing in the middle of a game? That's not honorable. You could do it to the AI though, because again, they'll just spam it. Overall though, it's a fun time with a friend. Don't expect anything like super technical. I mean, this isn't Third Strike or Tekken Tag or something, but it is fun. And I really respect they'd even place a mode like this into a game to begin with. It probably was a lot of work to do, but I'm glad it's here. And I think by now, you can see just what makes this game so special to me and many others. This was a big part of my childhood game collection, and it's one I come back to and enjoy every single time I play it. You'd think it'd just be the nostalgia, but this game exists in a special little place in my heart. And that's why to me, Revenge of the Sith the video game is one of the best Star Wars games ever made. And yeah, that's all I really gotta say about that. I just wanted to make a smaller video talking about one of my favorite Star Wars games before moving on to maybe something a bit bigger. And yeah, I do really think this is a special little gem of a game, and it's not really talked about as much. Even Republic Commando is talked about more, and don't get me wrong, that game is genuinely phenomenal. But this one really deserves more love when I think about it. But what did you think about it? Do you agree with me? Do you not? Do you think I'm dumb? Do you think I'm a LARPer? Do you think I'm a genius? Let me know in the comments below. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.